So, my house has a crack in it, right there. Now, I've got three options here. I can ignore it. That's what we did when we first moved in. It was there 6 years ago, but it was much smaller. And now, all of a sudden, 6 years later, it's gotten bigger. So I could ignore it. The second option is I could patch it. I could take a little bit of the spackle, lather it up, and just and that is our dogs. So there, look at that. No more crack. So I could do that. But the problem is that's not really fixing it. That's just covering it up. It's a Band-Aid quick fix. And chances are if this is indicative of a bigger problem, it'll be back. Now, there is a third option. I can repair it. But the problem is that's hard. I might have to cut out some drywall, reinforce some studs, the header. I'm going to have to do some hard work, or even worse, have to hire somebody. So that's hard. So I got three options here for my crack. I can ignore it, patch it, or repair it. And you know what? Relationships are kind of like that. See, with relationships have cracks. That's just a reality. Relationships have cracks because we have cracks. And over the last year, duck. There we go. And over the last year during COVID, our cracks came out. Because you see, stress reveals our cracks. And this was a stressful year. So chances are you've seen some cracks in your relationship. And today, I want to talk about them. But first, give me a second to get the camera set up. So, as I was saying, relationships are kind of like this crack I have. And because of COVID, we're seeing cracks in our relationships like never before. You see, stress reveals cracks. Stress doesn't really create cracks. It might seem like it does, but no. Stress reveals them. It brings to the surface the weaknesses that are already existing. See, that's what's happened to all of us last year. Stress revealed cracks. See, I was reading an article recently in a magazine that described this phenomenon perfectly. And here's what one guy said. So too much togetherness, a lack of personal space, and the inability to do normal activities like going to the gym were damaging. It just magnified the problems that we already had because we couldn't spend any time away from each other. Can you relate? Does that sound familiar? Did any cracks show up in your relationship this past year? I'm guessing yes. So what do you have in as far as cracks in your relationship? I want you to think of one right now. Okay, I want you to think of one. I want you to think of that crack and put it in your head. Okay, now you're a crackhead. No, no, I'm just kidding. Cocaine addiction is very serious and there is help for you. But back to your crack. Now, what did you do with your crack? You have the same three choices that I have with mine in my house and with the wall. I can ignore it, patch it, or repair it. So what does that look like? Well, I'm going to use anger as an example because I'm sure nobody around here deals with anger. So what does it look like? Well, I could ignore it. You minimize it, deny it, make excuses, blame the other person, or I could patch it. You do a quick apology and move on. Promise you'll be better next time. Really, I will. Or third is you could repair it. You understand your anger. You explore how your family expressed anger. You learn better coping mechanisms. And you repair your crack. So what do you do? Well, the whole theme of this series is this. Are you ready? Repair your cracks before they become canyons. Let me say that again, just to make sure you get this. Repair your cracks before they become canyons. Okay? Because cracks grow. Cracks never simply stay the same. Repair your cracks before they become canyons. Please. I implore you. Because dealing with a crack in your relationship is so much easier than dealing with a canyon. So, did you know that the Bible contains this amazing image of the damage that's done when cracks become canyons? See, I'm guessing that you don't need any help imagining this idea. You've probably seen your friends, your family members, seen some relationships fall apart because of really dysfunctional canyons. Maybe you've even lived through it yourself. But what the Bible includes that you might not have seen before is hope. A picture of redemption, of healing. And isn't that what we all want for our relationships? So for this, we are going to turn to Isaiah chapter 30. Now this is part of a larger section in this book where God is giving judgment over Israel and Judah for their turning away from him and relying on things like wealth and power and the support of other nations for their power and protection instead of turning to God. God begins this chapter in verse 1 with this: "Woe to the obstinate children." He describes Israel as obstinate children and then spends the rest of the chapter explaining that and saying what did he want to say to these obstinate children. See, then he describes Israel's rebellion, deceit, their unholy alliances. And see, by this point in the Old Testament, Israel's cracks of disobedience, they've turned into all-out canyons. And by verse 12 in this chapter, God explains to the Israelites what happens when cracks become canyons. Here's what it says. "Therefore, this is what the Holy One of Israel says. Because you have rejected this message, relied on oppression and deceit, this sin will become for you like a high wall, cracked and bulging, that collapses suddenly in an instant. It will break in pieces like pottery, shattered so mercilessly that among its pieces not a fragment will be found for taking coals from the hearth or scooping water out of a cistern." That is tragic. Not just break apart, but shatter mercilessly. That's the prophecy that God gives to Israel if they continue to walk in disobedience. And that's the same prophecy God gives to us. And he gives to our relationships when we let our cracks become canyons. So at that point, then God starts to paint a picture of what redemption could look like. In verse 15, here it is. "This is what the sovereign Lord, the Holy One of Israel, says. In repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. But you would have none of it." You see, Israel wanted to continue in their stubbornness, just like some of you. God even tells them, you can have salvation, you can have strength, but you won't. You won't have any of it because of your stubbornness and your rebellion. But a few verses down, it says this: yet the Lord longs to be gracious to you. Therefore, he will rise up to show you compassion. For the Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him. See, then he gives this amazing promise. People of Zion, who live in Jerusalem, you will weep no more. How gracious he will be when you cry for help. As soon as he hears, he will answer you. People of River Life, cry out to God for help. And as soon as he hears, he will answer you, and you will weep no more. Admit your cracks. Don't ignore them. Don't cover them up. Cry out to God for help, and you will weep no more. And as soon as he hears, he will answer you. That's an amazing promise. Then a few verses down, Isaiah gives this incredible picture of what will happen when you do this. Verse 26. The moon will shine like the sun, and the sunlight will be 7 times brighter, like the light of 7 full days, when the Lord binds up the bruises of his people and heals the wounds he inflicted. Isn't that what you want for your marriage, for yourself, for your dating relationship? This is what God is offering you today. Repair your cracks before they become canyons. Allow the light of God's healing hand into those dark places, into those dark crevices in your life and in your relationships. Those cracks that have been revealed this past year during COVID, it's time to let God heal. So I want to close by addressing an emotion that some of you might be feeling right now. I just can't. It's too hard. It's too painful. I'm scared. What if my marriage is too far gone? What if I'm just too broken? Well, if you're feeling that today, I want to give you an answer. And that answer is in the form of some lyrics from a song called Wounds by Jordan Feliz. Would you believe me if I said that you're not beyond repair? Would you believe me if I told you that I've been right there? I've seen the light come in to my darkest rooms, and I can tell you, friend, that his love heals wounds. Look into my heart. Let it be the proof. I'm only standing here 'cause his love heals wounds. God heals wounds. God repairs cracks. Even yours.